intersection of making art and making money.
Hello and welcome to Explore Your Enthusiasm with me, Tara Swiger. I help makers and artists feel awesome about their business, and one of the ways I do that is through this, my weekly podcast. This is episode 114, and today we are going to talk about something that I actually covered in the Month of Biz Love Challenge. If you haven't joined that yet, you can find it at taraswiger.com/monthofbizlove. But this was not only one of my more popular lessons in that 30 days of video lessons, but it was also one that I come back to again and again and again. So I wanted to share it for those of you who are in the month of Biz Love but still are interested in working on your business and overcoming the obstacles that you face in your creative business. I want to talk about this. I find it so practical, in fact, that I've been talking about this with my husband, with my friends, with my mom, and it just came up yesterday when I met some Starship captains for lunch. So we got to start by being totally honest. There are going to be obstacles in your business. There are obstacles in every business. There are obstacles and challenges and things you have to learn and overcome, and there are things standing in your way. And one of the steps of Month of Biz Love was to identify the obstacles that might come up in between where you are now and working on your goal. When I asked participants to share what they thought their obstacles were, I was actually kind of surprised by what I heard. So people said things like getting traffic to my website, making more sales, creating a marketing plan. They were listing these things as obstacles. But this is not really obstacles in the way I had defined it in Month of Biz Love. What I had talked about were things that would come up and derail you. So if you're working on increasing your sales, making more sales is your goal. What's going to derail you in between now and then? Or maybe paying yourself a certain amount of money is your goal, and one of the things you have to do is figure out how to make more sales, but that's not an obstacle. That's a challenge. That is a thing you need to learn in the course of getting to your goal. So those things that are obstacles that are maybe standing in your way or distracting you are things like the time that you have to spend, and if you don't have very much of it, the money you have to invest in your business. You might not have any. I definitely had none when I got started. There was no investor in my business other than my own hard work. It might also be your energy. I work with a lot of people who have fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue syndrome or are actually in the middle of chemo. So that is an obstacle to getting to work on your business. If you have limited time or energy or money, things like getting distracted, things like Pinteresting instead of actually working on your business, those are all obstacles. But more sales or better marketing, that is a process of learning and testing that every new business has to go through. That maybe the obstacle is not knowing the answer. But everyone in their business is at that place. That's not particular to you. So that's good news. Everybody has to learn not only how to do their marketing and how to overcome, learning how to get people to their website, but they also have to overcome the obstacles of not having enough time or not having enough money or working within the constraints that you have in your business. That's a process everybody goes through in building their business. So learning to operate within your limits of money, time, energy, space, and support, that's a challenge that everyone has to varying degrees. But I don't want you to ever let those limits make you think that it's not possible to build a business that works with your life. That is just an obstacle to overcome. But what I want to talk about today is the main issue is how do you see those obstacles, those challenges, those things you need to learn, the limits you have in your life, how do you see them? Do you see them as challenges to overcome, or do you see them as threats to the very life and possibility of your business? So this is actually something that's been studied by psychologists for years and years, and they refer to it as the difference between a challenge mindset or a challenge reaction and a threat reaction or a threat mindset. So in all of the years of studying it, they found that in a challenge mindset, you experience less anxiety, depression, and are much more likely to solve a problem and come up with possible positive outcomes. It also actually changes the reaction you have in the moment to a obstacle, if it's a challenge reaction or a threat reaction, which we'll talk about the difference in a minute. It changes how your body reacts to stress. You have lower blood blood pressure, deeper breathing, slower heart rate when you are reacting as if it's a challenge than if you're reacting as if it's a threat. And that is fascinating because not only is your body reacting differently to the stress of it, but your body's reaction tells your brain how it should react. If it should be closed and scared and try to protect you, or be open and curious and creative and looking for solutions. So this difference is not just something that's fun to talk about, but it actually is going to change physiologically how you react to the challenge in front of you. So let's define what the difference between challenge and threat is. A challenge is anything that provokes our desire to test our strength and abilities, and that gives us the opportunity to improve them. So it gives you the opportunity to get better at doing what you do. And a threat is something scary that you haven't chosen and that you don't want, and it freaks you out. What's interesting is the difference between the two of them is your perception of them. Except for things that are immediately dangerous to your life, like an animal attacking you or you being within a day of starving to death, except for the things that are immediately physically dangerous, everything else, the difference between the challenge and the threat is your perception of them. And when you perceive something to be a threat, you have a threat reaction, and your main concern in a threat reaction is to avoid danger and protect yourself. In other words, to close up and protect yourself. And a threat mindset, which means you are having a threat reaction to a bunch of stuff, that's a threat mindset. A threat mindset focuses on the potential for risk, for danger, for harm. And in it, you focus on avoiding the negative outcome instead of creating a positive outcome. Now, a challenge reaction is all about engaging the problem in front of you and coming up with a solution. So a threat reaction is like, oh no, hide, protect myself. And a challenge reaction is like, okay, how can we fix this? How can we solve this? How can we overcome this? So you immediately go into engaging the problem in front of you, trying to come up with a solution. And in a challenge mindset, where you're reacting, you're having a challenge reaction to most of the things in front of you. Challenge mindset, you focus on the opportunity for growth and positive outcomes. So even though you acknowledge that the bad stuff might happen, or perhaps has happened, you feel realistically optimistic that you're going to learn or grow or create the best possible outcome. Now, this doesn't mean that you think everything is great and fantastic at all, but it means that you are seeing possible positive outcomes and you're seeing ways that you could grow or learn or change from it. So let's look at an example, a business example. So let's say you launch something and your launch doesn't go as well as you wanted it to go. It doesn't have the results, you don't have the sales, you don't make the money, people don't hear about it, perhaps all of your technology crashes, whatever happens. Now, a threat reaction to your launch going badly would be to say, that launch went badly, I don't know what I'm doing in my business. Or even just the phrase, that launch went badly, period. Like, that launch did not go well, I did not make the money, and so I'm screwed. Whereas a challenge reaction would simply be, why? Why didn't that launch go well? What could have impacted it? And what can I do for next time to learn from this bad outcome to get a positive outcome next time? That's the difference. It's just noticing, where can you learn from something? Where can you change something? Where can you be realistically optimistic in making a change for the next time? It does not mean that you'll say, oh, that launch went badly and I don't care, because you probably care deeply. It probably matters quite a bit to you. It simply means that you are learning from it and that you are seeing it as something to solve, a problem to engage with, and not a reason to shut down. So it happens a lot of times when people have launches or products that don't do well, is they take that as proof that they suck and that they shouldn't have a business and that everything about them is awful and that their business isn't going to work out, they shouldn't be doing this, there's no hope, nothing will ever be better. I mean, this sounds dramatic, but I hear this all the time from makers, and I hear it from people who have successful businesses and yet are feeling super down by something that happened in their business. That is a normal reaction. I'm not saying you'll never feel that way, but at some point you need to shift from that from that mindset that everything is awful and you suck into, okay, that didn't go well. What could I learn from it? What if I don't suck? What if this isn't the end of the world? What if there's something to be learned or gained or some positive outcome in the future that could come from this? So you can see that a threat reaction makes a lot of sense if you're being attacked by a bear, right? You need to be afraid for your life. You need to curl up. You need to protect yourself if you're being attacked by a bear. But it doesn't make any sense when you come across something you don't know or understand in your business. If you're thinking that not knowing how to get traffic to your site is an obstacle, then does it make sense for you to close up and be afraid of it? Or does it make sense for you to engage in the challenge and try to come up with a solution? If you approach your business problems as a threat, you're going to avoid dealing with them, and you're not going to learn what moves you forward. You're not going to learn how to actually have a business if you think of all the obstacles in front of you as threats. Because that is how you build a business, is by learning the next thing, and then the next thing, and then learning from your mistakes, learning from things you don't understand, going out and figuring it out and trying things. But if you approach them from a challenge mindset, you're going to snap into problem-solving mode. You're going to think creatively, and you're going to find resources that would give you what you need, that you don't yet have. Now, the good news is you can change how you perceive any challenge in front of you, any obstacle in front of you. Even if you have a threat reaction at first, you can change that reaction. So whether you asked for it or not, you can move from a threat mindset to a challenge mindset. And psychologists call this a cognitive reappraisal, which is where you are changing the way you're thinking about something. I call it reframing, and I have there's a podcast episode, I think it's episode 3 or 4, it's all about how to reframe things in your business. So this cognitive reappraisal you can do for anything, and when you do it, it actually unlocks some innate skills and enthusiasm for defeating the challenge. So just the shift from the threat mindset to the challenge mindset will often get you a little more enthusiastic to work on the problem in front of you. Now, I want to reiterate that I'm not saying that it doesn't mean that bad things don't happen and that they don't completely suck when they happen. It doesn't mean you're not sad or that you don't experience loss. That's still going to happen. It simply means that you look for the possible positive outcomes and thus you feel more like you have choices. This is so big, and this comes up all the time when I'm talking to people about their creative businesses, is that when you get in a mindset of a threat and all you can see are obstacles and all you can see is what's not working, you don't feel like you have any choices and you feel like everything is happening to you. Well, you can't move forward if you don't see what choices you have in the situation. So by looking at it and saying, what if this is an opportunity for me to do something, choices start to open up for you. And that allows you to see some opportunities. It allows you to gather resources and support, and it also allows you to tap into your internal strengths. So another thing that we did in Month of Biz Love was identify our strengths and then ask, how could I apply these strengths to these obstacles? But if you see something as only attacking you, then you don't think you have any way of overcoming it. But by looking at it as something you could learn from, something you could engage with, you will then say, okay, what strengths can I bring to bear in this situation? Now, I want to be clear, this does not involve thinking positively all the time. I'm not saying it's all rainbow and sunshines and that you shouldn't feel threatened by anything. It just means investigate your own strengths and abilities and try to increase them. Try to get better. Try to be stronger. So it's not that you like the challenge. I'm not indicating that the things that you approach with a challenge mindset are fun. It's just that you recognize that you can grow and change through the process. So this just came up for me, and part of the reason I wanted to record this podcast is because it just came up for me with something personal I had been feeling super bummed out about. It's a health-related thing, so I won't get into it. But it had, for a long time, it had just been a major bummer. And I woke up the other morning and I was feeling sad about it. And then I thought, what if this is an instance where I'm looking at it as a threat and it could be a challenge? What would I change if this was a challenge and this was a way for me to get stronger? And I listed a bunch of things I could do. And I just listed a bunch of things I could research, kinds of books I could read, people I could talk to. It doesn't mean that the thing isn't going to still be sad and true. It doesn't mean that the outcome is going to be any different. It just means it's an opportunity for me to learn something new and approach it from a different thing. And here's the big thing. It makes me feel like I now have some choices in this situation. It makes me feel like things aren't just happening to me, but that I am taking some action and agency. And agency is at the heart of feeling hopeful. And so whether this is in your own personal life or whether this is in your business life, hope is vital to you taking action. And agency, feeling like you have something you could do, is one of the foundations of being able to feel hopeful. So super important that you recognize you can approach things from a challenge mindset instead of a threat mindset, even if your first reaction is a threat mindset. So a challenge mindset, summarize it all, is going to make it more likely you're going to find the resources you need and end up with a positive outcome, because you're going to be looking for the positive outcomes and trying to come up with what they might be, come up with paths through there. And our goal is to move your feelings about your business and all the obstacles within it from a threat mindset to a challenge mindset overall, so that all the time when things come up in your business, all the time when launches don't go well, or somebody has a bad customer service experience, or things get lost in shipping, or your website crashes, or you choose the wrong technology and they lose all of your data, so that all of those things you approach right away from a challenge reaction. Okay, how do I solve this? What can I learn from this? Where can I go from here? So that's my goal, is to help you move in all kinds of situations by recognizing you're not alone, by recognizing you have strengths, by recognizing that you know stuff and you can handle it, and you also have the ability to learn and change and grow. Now, one easy way to make this shift, if you're listening to all this and you're like, well, that's very well and good, but everything in my business is awful, one easy way to make this shift is to think of a very specific situation that you feel like is an obstacle, or that you feel like is a threat to your business's survival or health, or just even is going to be in the way of you and your goal, and ask yourself, what's the best that could happen? Because our minds often want to ask, what's the worst that could happen? I mean, I don't know about your brain, but my brain really focuses on the worst that could happen and then runs like scenarios of how bad it could go. But by asking what's the best that could happen, you start to generate some possible positive outcomes to the situation. This shifts your focus from all that could go wrong to all that could go right if you do your best. And by generating those possible positive outcomes, you also can start thinking about, what could I do to make it more likely to happen? So here's the thing. If you have a threat reaction, you picture the worst possible things that could happen. What your brain will do is show you all of the pathways to the worst possible outcome. If you choose to start thinking about what is the best that could happen, your brain will start answering a question, how could I make that happen? So that's what I want you to do. I want you right now, or when you're done listening, to picture the challenge or threat that is overwhelming you in your business right now, something specific, or something that you're afraid of coming up if you pursue the goal in front of you, and then ask, what's the best that could happen? Then I want you to write down your answers for all of what is the best that could happen, and then any ideas that come up for how you could make that best case scenario happen. You don't need to make a plan or spend a lot of time thinking about that, but just let your brain start percolating, right? So I have a teaching thing coming up in Charleston, by the way. If you're in the Crochet Guild of America, I'll be teaching in Charleston at the Crochet Guild of America annual show. I think it's called our annual conference, and that's in just about a week from the time you listen to this. And I might be really nervous. I tend to be less nervous now with speaking and teaching because I've done it before, but often what I do before I teach or speak is I ask myself, what's the best possible outcome of this entire trip? And then I start listing. Well, I'm going to see some Starship captains. I'm going to meet some new interesting people. I'm going to help some students by what I'm teaching. I might come up with a new way of saying things I've been struggling to say for a while. I might create an awesome new workbook, or come up with new questions in my workbook that I can use later in my work. I'm going to enjoy Charleston. I love Charleston. List all those. And then some of those have really tangible things I could do to make them happen, right? So that's what I want you to think about, is what's the best that could happen, and then any ideas you have for making those best case scenarios more likely to happen. And then I want you to share them with us on Instagram. Use the hashtag Explore Your Enthusiasm to share it with other listeners of the podcast and tell us what's your best possible outcome and what are any ideas you have about how you can make it happen. This will help you see that you are not alone in the things that feel challenging or threatening to you. And I bet a lot of you are struggling with the same issues, so if you share what's the best possible outcomes, you might get inspiration from each other. So share it with the hashtag Explore Your Enthusiasm. You can always use that hashtag to show me what you're doing when you're listening. I love seeing all of your different crafts. It's fantastic. And make sure you actually say something. Don't just do a bunch of hashtags and then run away, but participate with the community and say something in your post so that I know what I'm looking at. Thank you so much for listening, and I wish you a day that is full of not too many challenges and no threats, and one that's just very enthusiastic. Thanks so much for watching. You can get weekly lessons like this in your inbox, along with access to worksheets and checklists and transcripts from all the podcast episodes when you sign up below. You can also subscribe on YouTube, and YouTube will notify you when there's a new video. And you can follow me on Twitter or Instagram. If you do, be sure to say hello or leave a comment below the video to let me know you're there. Thank you so much for watching, and have a very enthusiastic day.